good. Weddings. Let's talk about weddings. Weddings. Stockton, give me something about weddings.
You want me to be the resident cynic? I
Yes,
will
the
this time.
resident
There's so much
cynic.
good stuff going on
Yes.
here, right? I have a friend that's done weddings quite a few times. To quite a few people. Not as a minister. And
Yes.
he has the general remark. He said, if you're thinking of getting married, he said, I tell you what you do. Go out and buy a house you really love and give it to a woman you hate.
That's really
It's a little sick, but I like it.
or vice versa, right?
Or vice versa, right. Right.
Stockton fills a void.
He does. He fills a void, yes.
I try.
In this book called It Was on Fire When I Lay Down on It, which came out this past fall, there was a story about a wedding that is sort of an archetype. Unitary minister, I've married about 1,500 couples, and I'm often asked to perform interfaith marriages. The mixed marriage is the common term. Widely differing religious backgrounds are not usually all that's involved, however. Any wedding where the bride and groom is marrying someone outside the family's notion of the edges of things is mixed, shall we say. To be asked to perform a mixed marriage is to join two people who are trying to cross a minefield without getting blown up. The classic example of the mixed marriage, on any level you want to use that word, is the wedding of a lovely young woman from Brooklyn. She had a huge family, Polish immigrant stock, and she was very Jewish. Her tall, handsome, and likewise wonderful fiancé hailed from Detroit. Likewise a huge family. Likewise immigrant stock, but Irish and Roman Catholic. The bride's family included a rabbi and a cantor. The other team had some priests and a nun on the register. And it was bad enough that the young man and woman had come all the way out west to attend graduate school, bad enough that they might not marry someone from the old neighborhood, but to fall in love with, and even worse, to marry someone outside, someone not like us, was a shameful disaster, a familial earthquake of the first magnitude, unthinkable. But Ms. Brooklyn and Mr. Detroit were 21 years old, and they were overcome with love. And love, they were quite certain, would take care of any obstacle. So anyhow, they stepped on the mine, came to my house, called their moms, and exactly what you thought would happen. The mothers were united in their response. I won't say this as loud as it came over the phone, but it was, "You're gonna marry a what?" Followed by a lot of sobbing. And then the daddies got on, and there was this very stern line, "Come home this minute, now." Well, for a month, the mail and the phone calls flowed like a waterfall. Uncles and aunts and cousins got in the fray. The rabbi wrote a 30-page letter. The priests and the nuns prayed. The families were not coming ever to such a wedding. The families threatened blackmail. They threatened heartbreak. Bribes were offered, hard cash to back out. But no matter, nothing was going to dissuade the couples, not even being disinherited, which was threatened. Not that the bride and groom were unmoved, mind you. They spent a lot of time in my office crying and cursing. The marriage was meant to be, come hell or high water, however, both of which seemed well on their way from my point of view. But I keep coming back to this invisible shield. The couple were in love. And it's amazing what you can believe in when you're in love. And the other thing was this. They came from tough, resilient folks who had made it the hard way. And they'd always told their kids, don't ever back off from something you believe in. And their kids were doing exactly what their parents told them because they believed in each other and they weren't backing off an inch. Now, the tiebreaker in this seemingly hopeless standoff was the grandmother of the groom, Grandma. By God, if her only grandson was going to get married, no matter to a you-know-what, then she was going to be there for the sake of the unborn grandchildren who would need her. Besides, she hadn't thought much of her daughter-in-law anyhow, and that had worked out, so she was coming. Grandma went out and bought a ticket. She was coming to the wedding, period. And so the dominoes began to fall, all because of Grandma. If Grandma was coming, then she'd have to have support. She couldn't go. We didn't want to go to the wedding, they said, but we got to go with Grandma. She couldn't go alone, and pretty soon all the Irish Catholics from Detroit were coming. They'd show those Jewish yahoos from Brooklyn what family loyalty was all about, and they'd bring Uncle Dickie, the priest, to keep the thing as godly as possible. Well, if the Catholics were coming, you knew what was going to happen next. 35 Brooklyn Jews, including Grandfather Rabbi, had plane tickets by Monday. And the wedding began to shape up like a grudge match between Notre Dame and Jerusalem Tech. This is called, in physics, achieving a critical mass. And I know that's a bad pun, but that's what was going to happen. Think about it, okay. Critical mass, okay. Sure enough, they all came. And then it really got complicated. See, the grandfather rabbi begged to be at least allowed to say a blessing in Hebrew at the end of the service, which was okay, but when the Irish Catholics got wind of this, nothing would do but that grandmother, who had once performed in light opera, should sing Schubert's Ave Maria before the blessing as a kind of prophylactic to the Hebrew. And then one side wanted a little incense used, and the other side wanted to have some wine and to jump up and down on the goblet, and the bride and groom just did a lot of whatever. So the great day came on Saturday evening after sundown to please the you-know-whats, and the families marched into church and sat down. Well, maybe sat down is too light a word. Dug in was more what I had in mind. For a time, I would have given 6 to 5 odds in favor of a real whole-hog Donnybrook in this thing. Instead of a ceremony, we were going to have a fight. But I keep forgetting about love. The Irish Catholics from Detroit love the groom, no less than the Polish Jews from Brooklyn love the bride. And for very good reasons. They were remarkable young people, worthy of great pride and respect, even if they didn't have a brain in their heads when it came to choosing mates. And even the most bitter, jaundiced critic of the march had a hard time ignoring how tall and handsome the groom was, or how very beautiful, enchanting was the bride. And you'd really have to be blind to miss what happened during the ceremony. When the couple said their vows, it was clear they meant every last word. And the bride began to cry and weep, and the groom took her in his arms, and he wept. And then I wept, and then everybody else wept, and we wept so much we couldn't go on. I've seen weddings that were wet before, but this was a communal bath. Even Uncle Dickie out in the chancel, he wouldn't want to come to the church where this terrible thing was going, was dabbing his eyes as he watched us, the priest. Oh yeah, so he wept on for lack of words. And it was then, that amazing moment, that Grandma got up to sing. The great matriarch of the Irish Catholics, 78 years old, and she pulled herself together, and she did not come all this way to let her grandson down. She stood by the piano, took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and she sang. Delivered, as the rabbi said afterwards, the old lady delivered the goods. Never have I heard Ave Maria sung with more feeling, more passion. She was magnificent, not some scratchy, overdramatic sound you might expect from an aging third-rate opera singer. No, this is a grandma singing for her grandson. The last lovely note faded. We all cried. Silence held us firm. And Grandma took a breath and said, there now. Well, the Brooklyn Jews gave her a standing ovation. And Grandma! They didn't know what was to do proper at a church, but they knew music, and they knew Grandma had given it all she had, and they knew great love when they saw it. She was their kind of guy, as the rabbi said, and a standing O was called for, so they did. Yay, Grandma. And the grandfather rabbi, who was the next act in this scene, was not about to be outdone. He walked with great stately dignity to stand by the bride and groom. And then, in behalf of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and every last Jew in Brooklyn, he laid a blessing on those children that will last them the rest of their lives. I mean, they were blessed, and you didn't have to understand Hebrew to know it. So, of course, as you'd hope, the Irish Catholics gave him a standing ovation right there in the church. Yay, Grandma! I mean, it turned into something beyond a wedding. And that's when the minister sighed a deep sigh of relief, knowing that despite his own cynicism, that joy, once again, and love had won the day. We were about to have a happy ending, and God, how we want happy endings in this life. More than anything else in this life we hope for, just a few happy endings. What the families had not understood until that moment, I suspect, was that they had many of the same values and traditions. Just because they were Jew and Catholic didn't mean that, even though their metaphors were different, they believed in family, and they believed in faith, and they believed in love. They believed in the same God and the capacity to celebrate those things. And the bride and groom rushed off down the aisle. Everybody else rushed out of the church for different reasons, because there was a polka band in the refectory, and the newlyweds rushed onto the floor to dance, and grandfather rabbi asked Grandma singer to dance, and the crowd roared and joined them, and the party was on. Never have I seen such reception. Never was there such eating and laughing and singing long into the night. Magnificent. It was everything you hope a reception would be. 3 days later, when my head cleared, I wondered how it had happened. And I decided that the skeptical minister had once again been wrong. The bride and groom were right. Love was more powerful than prejudice. Love won out. It doesn't always work this way, but this time, Love 21 was the score. Evil spirits zipped. When in doubt, I suspect you can trust those you love. All of them. I know there's a nice epilogue to this. A year later, I got a postcard. Close to the first anniversary of this amazing occasion, I thought, this is from the bride and groom, as these things often are. But oh no, this is from a cruise ship in the Caribbean. Not from the bride and groom at all, but from the parents of the bride and groom, who have become the greatest of friends. I was afraid you're going to blow your head up. We need a name for this. Give me a title.
Well, that's obvious, Fulghum. That's the greatest Jewish hymn of all time. That's Oy Vey Maria.
So, dancing at the end of the wedding, and if you want to dance, you go to taverns to dance, and that's where we're going. Give me some tavern music.
Well, holy smoke, land sakes alive, I never thought this could happen to me. I got stung by a sweet honeybee. What a feeling come over me. It started in my legs, crept up to my head, flew to my heart. I was done dead, I'm done. I got stung. You were all that I wanted and more. I've seen honeybees before. It started buzzing in my ears, buzzing in my brain. Got stung all over, but I'm feeling no pain. I'm done. I got stung.
Most of us on this stage have been to taverns a lot, not because we're heavy drinkers, but because we're heavy dancers. And almost everybody here has been in a Buffalo Tavern in Ballard at one time or another, where some of the great dynamic log music used to happen. We like to go not only to dance, but to watch the people who were there because they're so very real. One of the things I like to go and see is the geek dancers. And I didn't say Greek, I said geek dancers. Let me tell you about geek dancers. When I get down and my life is log-jammed and I need some affirmative action, I go where people dance, like the Buffalo Tavern. I don't mean joints where people go to get crocked and then wobble around on the floor to music. I mean places where people who really like to dance go to do that. I like dancers. I never met a serious dancer who wasn't a pretty fine human being. And I enjoy the never-ending pleasure of being surprised by just who the dancers are. It does me good to go to a joint and see a couple of ill-builts, kind of fat and homely and solemn and all, get up on the floor and waltz away like angels. When I see people like that on the street and I start to look down my nose at them, a better voice in my head says, they're probably dancers, Fulghum. And I feel a lot better about them and about me. Anyhow, about geek dancing. Geek is a word that describes sort of strange folks, and a lot of my students used to refer to me as an old geek, so I kind of know what that means. My favorite place, the New Melody Tavern, has traditional jazz on Sunday nights from 6:30 to 9:30. The geek band plays swing music from Chicago and New Orleans from the good old days. Most of the people who show up are over 40 blue-collar types, one beer. They got to be at work at 7:30 in the morning, not what you'd call a really rowdy crowd. Dancers is what you'd call them. And I like to look around and find the King Hill champion geek for the evening. An old guy wearing invisible house slippers in his bathrobe and balding, white hair, short, wrinkled, the kind who sort of lists to port when he walks. One, if you saw him at a bus stop, you'd think that's strictly nursing home material, but you see him here, and you know this guy is a dancer, a dancing geek. And he usually has his wife, the geekess, with him. She's a bit younger, fluffed up for dancing, and she's been fluffed up for dancing for 50 years. Check her shoes. If they are black, with a strap across the mid-heel, you know what she came for and what she's going to do. So the music cranks up. He takes her by the hand and he sort of limps onto the floor. It's an act just to set you up. He wants to wait until the last minute to show you what he can do. And then it happens. She steps into a permanent place in his arms. And the years fall away, and once again, Cinderella and the prince move to the music in the room and the music in their hearts. It takes about 40 years to dance with someone this way. Such ease, such grace, all kinds of little moves that have been perfected without words. He dances flat-footed with an economy of motion. She responds to unseen signals to twirl out and twirl back. Their eyes meet from time to time, and you know you're seeing a pretty happy marriage out there on the floor. You have to love somebody a long time to do what they're doing. Sometimes the old geek asks another lady to dance, and someone usually asks the geekess. They make whoever they're dancing with look good. An 81-year-old geekus once asked me to dance in such a situation, and I gave her my best. She sat me down and said, "Honey, you are real good," and I lived off that for a week. I want to be, and I fully intend to be, an old geek dancer. My geekus and I, we're working on this. I realize it's a public responsibility to help everyone stay as young as long as possible. And I don't want to die in my bed or run over in the street. If I have my choice, I'd like to die some night at the end of the last dance. Some lovely night, sit down in a chair, smile, pass on. This reminds me of something I heard about the Hopi Indians. They don't think there's much difference between dancing and praying. Both are necessary, they say, for a long and happy life. The Hopis should know, I guess. They've been around for a long time, and they've been through a lot. They say that to be a useful Hopi is to be one who has a quiet heart and takes part in all the dances.
Don't think I'm complaining, I'm mighty pleased between men, 'cause you give me just one little peck on the back of my neck. I break out in a cold, cold sweat. What if I live to be 102? I won't let nobody sting me but you. I'll be buzzing that hive every day at 5, and I'm never gonna leave your side alive. I'm done. I got some stinging babs. Take one, Rex. Like a little mandolin now. Take it, Walter. I got stung by a sweet honeybee. What a feeling come over me. It started in my legs, it ducked in my head, it grew to my heart, and I was stung dead. I'm done. I got stung. Here we go. Well, holy smokes. And land sakes alive, I never thought this could happen to me.
We could probably open our own tavern. Don't go away. We'll be right back.